Good afternoon and welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast. Now, folks, we have a great show in store for you today. I'm going to talk about a little bit about my childhood and what it was like to live out my childhood dream. But first,
Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
a very, very happy and tremendous Friday to everybody out there today. We made it. It is Friday. It is the weekend. We're just a week away from high school graduations and, the start of summer. And man, it is going to be an awesome time. And I'm looking very forward to the summer and continuing to grow into this podcast and everything else that we have going on here on the Today with Tally podcast. Now, I do welcome everybody in that's listening on iHeartRadio and on Amazon and Google Podcasts and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and on and on and on. We are also on TikTok as well. So, folks, I'd like to welcome you all to the show. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to the show. We've got 160 episodes. And I know there's one out there that will definitely speak directly to you and perhaps inspire you, encourage you to do better in life, to maybe pick up a new hobby or begin something new today to better your life and your circumstance. Folks, today we are going to talk about how I lived out a childhood dream. Let me explain. I am a massive sports fan. Sports has dominated my life. Ever since I was a little boy, grown up in Claremont in San Diego, just up the road from PB. I grew up playing baseball. My childhood idol, my hero still to this day, Tony Gwynn. I grew up a junior Padre, going to all the games at the old San Diego Jack Murphy Stadium, back when stadiums meant something behind their names. And now they're all just the highest bidder when it comes to advertising for stadium names and rights and all that stuff. But back in the day, it was the Murph, Jack Murphy Stadium. And I was a catcher growing up, so Terry Kennedy was somebody that I looked up to. Benito Santiago, the guy who started, this guy threw from his knees, and nobody stole on Benito. And if you did, you were going to get called out. And it's a good thing that, back when I was growing up, they didn't have all the interleague play, or else Ricky Henderson, he's probably the only guy that would have stolen on Benito Santiago. But those were childhood idols of mine. Tony Gwynn, Terry Kennedy, Benito Santiago, Steve Garvey, Tim Flannery, John Kruk, Carmelo Martinez, just tremendous. Goose Gossage, Craig Nettles, just these ball players that I always looked up to as a kid. And ever since I stepped foot into Jack Murphy Stadium, was the first stadium I ever went to as a kid, I was mesmerized. I was the kid that was glued onto the field, always watching those athletes, watching the TV reporters, watching all the people on the field. And I said, man, those people are so lucky. Those people are so lucky. They're playing a game and they're living out their childhood dream, being in the big leagues. And ever since then, I've been glued to sports. I grew up collecting baseball cards. I had all my friends, and in San Diego, that's all we did. We played outside, and when it got dark, we were we were trading baseball cards. I'd break out the Beckett, looking up cards. I'm checking out values. We're trading cards. It was the best childhood that anybody could have with friends. And again, the memories. Riding the beach cruiser, it was back when I had to take myself to baseball practice. I had to get on my beach cruiser and go to practice. And then when I got done, I rode my bike home. I also had a paper route. At 12 years old is when I had my first job, the San Diego Union Tribune. I was a paper boy. Had over 100 customers that I was responsible for. Every day I would get home from school and I would fold the papers and I would load up my beach cruiser. I had a front basket, 2 rears, and I wore something that went over my neck that I carried a few in the front and a few in the back for weight distribution. And I would go out and I would deliver the papers. So they all had them all before 4:30 because back then they didn't have social media and all this other stuff. So people wanted to get the afternoon news. The San Diego Union Tribune, the Union was the morning paper that would be out by 4 a.m. and the Tribune was the afternoon news. And so that's how they got their news. And I got to know my customers and everything. But the unique thing about it was growing up for several years, we lived on the Mount Streets over there off of Balboa and Genesee and Claremont Drive area of San Diego. And my neighbor was Nick Canepa. Now, Nick Canepa is a long-time storied Hall of Fame sports writer. And this guy has been reporting sports since 1971. And, albeit I'm growing up in the early 80s there, in the mid 80s with his 2 sons. I remember John Canepa was my age. And we would be hanging out at his house all the time. And the smell of his dad's pipe, his tobacco pipe, and he's sitting there and he's always typing on a typewriter and all this, and he's writing, he's taking notes. He's watching these ball games on TV because to him, it was like all that newness had worn off of being in the stadiums all the time, and then there's 160 games 162 games in the MLB season. And, there's, NFL games, there's NBA, there's NHL, and he reports on all of it. So he can't go to every game. So he had a private room where he'd have 3 or 4 TVs set up and he'd be in there. And that's where he would put out his stories, send them all into the Tribune and to the Union in San Diego, and the AP would pick them up. Stories would sometimes go national, but he was a local San Diego sports reporter. And again, this guy has a storied career. But I always watched him growing up as a kid and said, if I never make it to the big leagues as a catcher, and I hit dingers as a kid. I mean, I was a good ball player growing up. I think I peaked out at about 13, 14 years old. But 12 years old, I mean, I was, I played on the San Diego City All-Star team with Claremont, and then I went over to Kearny Mesa and played on their pony tournament team. And I played all over the city of San Diego, and this is before they had all the big time, competition leagues. So I played pony, I played little league. And so again, my dream was to get on that field as a player. But I always said, if that can't happen, what Nick is doing is the next best thing. Being in these stadiums. And there's something about a stadium to me. Like, I love driving by stadiums. I just get mesmerized with it. It's because of the excitement and the feel of the game, to get to turn your mind to something different for 3 hours or for 4 or 5 hours if you're there tailgating, whatever it may be, to turn off life and to engage in something like a game, a kid's game. But to me, it's so much more than that, because it's my life. Sports has always been who I am. Sports has always been something that I've always took to because of maybe it's the competitive nature in me, as well as playing it, as a kid, and then, growing with the games and getting to know all the players and get, not personally, but from the back of the baseball cards, reading where they're from, what's their hometown, what was their birthday, what was their batting average, what was their, their on base percentage, how many stolen bases, how many RBIs, how many, it's just, so you get to learn a lot about these players. And I was mesmerized with that. And, I would end up moving away, from, San Diego and going to Colorado and having the Colorado Rockies have their expansion season that the year that we moved to Colorado. And, and then falling in love with the Rockies and, being a big Broncos fan and, and all this stuff. And it's just like sports, it's who we are. It's in my blood. It's in my DNA. Some people really enjoy going out hunting and fishing and doing all these other hobbies and stuff. And me, I've always just been a sports guy. That's what I love. That's what I cherish. I mean, I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds I've probably been to. I'm not kidding, about 1,000 games between NCAA football, basketball, college baseball, MLB, NHL, NBA, MLB. I mean, I have saved my ticket for every game I've been in. I have, I don't know how many, 8 massive frames of all my different ticket stubs. And again, it's who I am. And my kids have grown into that as well. You can sit down and talk to Brady, Colton, hell, my daughter Alana, man, they know stats of every player. They could tell you if they're a lefty, if they're a righty, when they were drafted, what college they went to, what position they played in high school. I mean, my kids, they just know all these guys, all these players, and that's what we do. We do sports trivia for fun and all that stuff. So I had an opportunity to go cover the Houston Astros a couple days ago. And let me tell you how this experience was. It was unlike any experience that I had ever imagined in my entire life. I was living out a childhood dream. I've spent my entire life touring the country, going to new stadiums that I have never been to with my family. We would take vacations. We went to the old Yankee Stadium before they demolished it. We went to the old Shea Stadium before they demolished it and built Citi Field. I've been to well over 20 different baseball stadiums, and I can't tell you how many different NFL and college stadiums that we've been to and watched games at. It's what I enjoy to do. I like going on stadium tours. I'm going on one tomorrow. We're taking the boys up to Arlington. We're going to go get a game at Globe Life. Why? We've never seen one there. We could check that one off the list. And there's something about when I step into a stadium on how it makes me feel, because it always brings back that childhood memory of what it was like in going and watching these games. And I was a different kid. I was a kid when I went to a game, I watched the whole game. I never left early. And I watched every play. I watched how the players carried themselves. I watched their swing. I watched how they warmed up. I watched how they did their wind sprints. I watched how they did their stretching. I've seen the game change and the way that they prepare, because there's, we evolve as, when it comes to sports and in health and nutrition. And, back then it was, bigger guys, there was some speed, but now it's like the game has changed so much into like you have these super athletes, that are flexible and they do different types of stretching. They may not lift as much because, maybe lifting may slow them down a little bit, or it may hinder them to maybe pull a hamstring or something like that. And I'm talking about all sports here. It's all about the flexibility now. It's about being a hybrid athlete, So, I don't know where I'm going with this now, but I lived out a childhood dream. I got my call up to the big leagues, if you will, And this is something I had never done before. It was something I had never done before. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I would stumble over my words, taking interviews with players. I didn't know if I would have the courage to walk up to these guys, to ask them questions. I didn't know what I was going to say. I mean, I'm living in this moment here. And again, it's like everything's coming back to me from the days of smelling the pipe smoke of Nick Canepa as he's writing a sports story about the Padres in 1984 World Series against the Detroit Tigers, the Motown series, or the 88 series with Kirk Gibson. This was all coming back to me. Watching Tony Gwynn in this, from the stands. Now I was on the field. All these years later, being that guy, saying, man, that would be really cool to be that guy. If I can't be that guy, I want to be that guy. If I can't be the player, what's the next best thing? Being the reporter. You get to talk to your heroes. And people say, baseball players and football, man, they're not heroes. Well, they're heroes to a lot of people. They may not be a hero in the capacity to where you think of a definition of a hero. But a lot of these men out there who are working have spent their entire life getting to where they're at because they've put in so much work behind the scenes that nobody understands what they have been through to get to the level that they are at. I'm talking world-class athletes here. You got 30 MLB teams, 26-man rosters. I mean, that's not a lot of people. At a 350, 360, 370 million people in the United States. But guess what? The MLB pulls out of, I don't know how many different countries. Japan has got a ton of players that are playing in the MLB. Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, all these South American countries as well. The competition is unlike anything that you could ever really imagine in sports. At least in the NFL, you have a 53-man roster. And I think you have 32 teams. So being a part of a Major League Baseball team is a big deal. And I think what makes you a hero more, if you're a player, is what they do on the field and off the field. Good men of character on the field and in the community relations, going and speaking to schools and kids and building this relationship and being a part of the city that you play in. Doing fundraisers, delivering turkeys to folks that are poor in the community, delivering toys to kids that may not have a present under their Christmas tree, but having somebody like a Jeremy Pena show up and say, I'm going to give you a bike. That's where the hero aspects come out in a lot of these people's lives. They may not be a hero to you, but they're most certainly a hero to somebody else. I know men that are 60, 70, 80 years old. They still talk about the days that they watched Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Dusty Baker, some of the greatest ball players of all time, Ted Williams. They still talk about those guys because those are their childhood heroes. Those are men they looked up to and have wanted to create their own version of themselves after the people that they watched on TV or watched live in these ballparks across America. So sports is life for a lot of people. It takes you out of the hustle and bustle of the everyday life, and it puts you into this bubble where you can actually enjoy something without worrying for just those 3 hours about what's going on in your life, the good day you may have had, the bad day you may have had, a bad relationship, some personal issues that you may be going through, politics always screaming in your ear, the negativity, the death, the destruction, the wars, the world strife. For 3 hours, you can put it down and enjoy a ball game. And additionally, you talk about that ball game. You talk about it with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers. People wear their gear. They're representing their hats, their jerseys, and it's always a topic of conversation. Sports people, they seek out other sports people. You know, hunters seek out hunters. Fishermen seek out fishermen. Businessmen seek out other businessmen. Just the way it is. And I've always been surrounded by sports people. So I got credentialed to go cover a Houston Astros baseball game on Tuesday. And I had known about it for a while, but I didn't want to talk about it until it happened because I'm superstitious. I was that kid that, I didn't walk on chalk, unless I was, I just very superstitious from a young age. I still am to this day. And I was so excited about it, but I didn't want to tell anybody until it was, I didn't even tell my daughter, Alana. It was all, I didn't really say anything about it. It was just something that I kept to myself. And then it happened. And then I showed up. And I didn't know what to expect. Again, I've never interviewed a professional baseball player. I've never interviewed a professional athlete. Well, I've interviewed one professional athlete in my life. That was Adam Wheeler, a Olympic gold medalist in 2008 that represented Team USA in the Olympics in China and earned himself a bronze medal. Now I've had on college kids and future pros, but never down there on the field interviewing a World Series MVP or other men that I've looked up to in the game for quite some time, like a Trey Mancini. Well, I show up, I get my badge, my pass, I walk in, and it was a different feeling now. I wasn't there as a fan. I was there as a reporter. I had a job to do. So I had to turn off my fan meter and turn on my professional, like this is my job meter. And that was tough to do. And like I said, I didn't know how I was going to handle it because it hadn't been like anything I'd ever done or experienced in my entire life. All I knew is that I was going to be living out my dream. And how I would end up living out my dream was unknown. I take it back to this Eminem song, right? And the Eminem song goes, you have one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you've ever wanted. One moment. Will you capture it or will you let it slip? And I felt as if I captured the moment. And I did not let it slip. And I turned into this man that I had never seen before. I've never interviewed anybody in my entire life until I started doing podcasts back in August, but I do firmly and strongly believe that God has put me on this path to prepare me for that day. To give me 160 hours of interviews, interviewing war heroes and other athletes, like Adam and like Easton Gibbs, with the University of Wyoming standout linebacker, Marines, soldiers, airmen, Uber drivers. I mean, really all walks of life, advocates, news reporters, talk show hosts. I mean, the amount of different people I've had on my podcast has set me up and it prepared me for this moment. So it was like, all right, I get there. I'm behind the scenes. I'm in different parts of the stadium I've never been to before in my entire life. And I'm like mesmerized by it. Jaw just hit the floor and I'm like, incredible. And I said, all right, I'm going to live in the moment. I'm going to live in the moment. I am going to capture this, almost like, Adley Rutschman, I think his name is, with the Baltimore Orioles, top prospect catcher. When he came in, I think it was late last year, he got the call up. And the first thing he did is when he took the field, he took off, he's the catcher, he took off that catcher's mask and he looked up and he did about a 5-second rotation. And he looked up at the stadium and he took it all in. His first big league start, took it all in. And then he popped his mitt, put on his mask, and they played ball. And that's the type of experience that I had. I literally did the same thing. I was like, holy cow. Not only am I on the field, but I'm on the field and I'm here hanging out with, again, a World Series MVP. Other folks who have World Series rings. Dusty Baker, Hall of Fame coach and player, walking right by me. Hey, Skipper, how you doing? With his toothpick in. I'm doing good. I was living out my dream. I was living out that dream as a paper boy, delivering the news, what was going on. Nick Canepa, the sports reporter, seeing that, the baseball cards, everything, my childhood started coming back to me. And I was like, man, I remember I was that kid sitting up there in the stadium, and now I'm down here again, a different capacity, but still on the field nonetheless. And again, to me, it was so much more than baseball. It was a healing moment for me. The 7 hours I was there. Now, the game was only 2 hours and 19 minutes, but I was there 7 hours. I got there 3 hours before the game, 3.5 hours before the game, when the Astros started to do their BP. And the way it works is, if you're credentialed on the field, you got from first to third, and you got to stay in the dirt. And the dirt's a large area, first to third, and you can just walk back and forth from each side of the dugout, whatever. And if a player comes up to you, you can ask them, would you like to be interviewed? And I get there, and I'm a very outgoing guy by nature. I did lose a lot of it in 2016, and I really didn't say much to anybody in 2017, 18, 19, and then I started to kind of become that old Brian again when it came to speaking to people and building relationships and just being that outgoing guy. But a different guy popped out. I mean, this has been as happy as I've been in a very long time. But it was a different type of happiness. It was a happiness, again, of fulfillment, of achieving a goal, a lifelong goal that you would probably say, that's never going to happen. But it did. There was no politics this game. There was nothing else on my mind except for how awesome these professional athletes are and how they warm up and the work ethic that they have and the work that they put in behind the scenes and how they eat and how they take care of their bodies. and how they speak and how they carry themselves. And again, how they warm up. I was capturing all this. And I went and I went on the first base side. I was all by myself, had never done this before. So I didn't know what to expect. So I was like, if I'm going to go represent Major League Baseball 4.0 sports media and entertainment out of New York, the Houston Astros, the Chicago Cubs, in my name, I was going to do it with the highest, utmost respect that I could have possibly done. So it started with me showing up and dressing up and looking the part. Folks said, man, you look like an ESPN guy out there. You were just by yourself. All the other reporters were all over, because they all know each other. This is my first time. So I just, I would say hi to them. Hey, I'm Brian. It's my first time, whatever. I was a new guy. And all of a sudden, Mauricio Dubon, me and him make eye contact, walks right up to me. Hey, I got a blue blazer on. I'm looking good. I'm feeling confident. And I get a great interview with him. And I had no idea what I was going to even say. It just came out. Again, I don't know what to say. I can't make it up. Shortly thereafter, there's a line of reporters down behind the home plate area and about halfway between home plate and first base on the dirt, just kind of waiting for Jeremy Pena to get done because, the former World Series MVP and really in Houston, this guy's bigger than life. He's got a smile that'll light up a room. He's got one of the best physiques that you could ever dream of having. I'm talking, again, world-class athlete. Well, I'm by myself. I'm still down there by third base, just chilling. Just kind of, again, I'm just taking in the moment. I'm happy to be there. Well, Pena gets done and me and him make eye contact and I start walking toward him. He starts walking toward me and all those other sports guys were like, who's this new guy? I'm just being me. And so, I started chopping it up with Pena and we had a great conversation. And the majority of the conversation that we had for about 8 minutes, was all off record and it was a very good experience. And then right when he was getting ready to walk away, I was like, hey, can I interview you for a minute? And he's like, yeah, let's go. And so I broke out my phone and I'm like, my son, and, he plays baseball in Grand Oaks, in Spring, Texas, in the Houston area. And if you had one thing to say, what would you say to encourage and inspire his baseball team? And he told me. And after that, and you're not really supposed to take pictures of players or anything when you're on the field. You can interview them and all that stuff, but they don't really want you like being a fan on the field. They want you to be a professional sports reporter. You're there, on an equal playing field. You can't have all these reporters being so starstruck that they can't do their job and all they're doing is, taking selfies. It's not supposed to be that way. This was my first time and not knowing all of the rules. I said, man, it would be incredible to show my kids that and my daughter, and my wife that I'm hanging out with Pena right now. Again, a guy that we love in our household, a hero to a lot in the city of Houston and, my kids. And really, I think he stole the hearts of millions in the country when he did this in the World Series. Created a lot of national fans and worldwide fans as his brand has just taken off. And he goes, well, let's do it. Let's get a picture. And he got close to me and I was like, okay, well, all right. Well, I don't want to break the rules, but okay. Yeah. I mean, he's telling me, all right, let's do a picture. And I broke out my camera and I still had it on record. Again, man, I was like shaking a little bit because I was so excited and so nervous and I just wanted to do good. I just wanted to go do such a great job that I was welcome back and could start doing this as a hobby, 15, 20 games a year or something like that, and to build relationships with some of the players on the field and kind of get to know them a little bit. So we did a cool little picture, and I said, Jerry, I was like, my man, Jeremy Pena. And he said, yes, sir. And then he smiles and it just lights up a room. And that was it for pictures. I didn't ask anybody else for any pictures or anything like that. It was just all 100% reporting on who these players were and what sort of value that they could add to other people. I ended up getting interviews, like I said, Mauricio Dubon, Jeremy Pena, Eric Hosmer, and I've been a Hosmer fan for a very long time. Trey Mancini, again, a guy that I followed his whole career ever since his call up in Baltimore back in the day when he played with Machado. Mervis, this guy, I believe his name is Mark Mervis. I had never even heard of him. He had only been in the league for 10 days. 10 days. And I was the only one that interviewed him, because nobody knew who he was. He was just kind of out there and, just kind of doing his own thing. So I approached him and said, how you doing? He says, I'm doing good. How are you? And he introduced himself as Matt Mervis. It's my 10th day in, and I'm excited to be here. I didn't start yesterday. I've only started, a game in Wrigley. Other than that, I've been on the bench. I'm a 10-day rookie contract. I'm filling in for somebody that got hurt, and I'm here to try to make a name for myself. Well, I interviewed this guy, and the second pitch he saw from Christian Javier, who's a dominant pitcher in the big leagues, takes him yard for his first major league home run. And I talked to this guy 20 minutes probably in between his stretching and stuff. He'd come back, we were talking about tons of things, where he grew up in the DC, Maryland area, how much his family means to him, his mom and dad and his siblings that have watched him, progress through high school and as a collegiate player, and then being, starting in low A ball and working his way up to AAA and having 36 home runs and leading the league in the minors, and then have his opportunity in the big leagues. And he made the best of it. And the cool thing is, I got to capture it. I got to ask him how it felt to be there an hour before his home run. Man was just, the gratitude was pouring at him. You could tell he was nervous. Hadn't been in front of a lot of cameras, but I'm not some big time guy. It's not like we have a huge camera. I had my phone out. I was just like, okay, yeah. So, all right. So tell me about yourself. And it was a great interview. And then I got to interview another kid, Miles Mastrobuoni, a guy, again, who's another solid kid, just got his, second chance in the MLB, and he's making the best of it. And these guys were salt of the earth gentlemen. Some of the league's best, if you will, when it comes to how to act and how to carry yourself. What type of an example to set for, to be a role model, really not only for kids, but for adults too. I asked one of those ball players, hey, Trey, you battled cancer. You're a cancer survivor. You're lucky to be alive. You didn't even know that you're going to be playing baseball ever again, but you're a man of perseverance and resilience. And I told him that, and we connected. And I said, hey, I'm not asking him about his, I'm not asking him balls and strikes and his OPS and his batting average and I'm talking real life with him. Like, what kind of inspiration and encouragement could you offer people out there today, kids, adults, or whoever's going to be listening to this. You say it's simple. Just just live on your feet. Be grounded. And wherever your feet are is where you're at that present moment in time. You're appreciating that time and that moment. I was on the field for 3 hours, and it was the best 3 hours, perhaps, of my life. And when I say my life, I'm not taking anything away from the birth of my children. It's a different thing here. I'm not taking away from the beautiful day when I got married. This is a different thing here. This is Brian Talley as a child. This was me as a kid on the field, interacting with people in the game that I have so loved all 46 years of my life. And seeing it come into fruition, it gave me a sense of overwhelming gratitude, euphoric. Have you ever had an experience that was so perfect before that you didn't want to go to bed because you didn't want that moment to end? That's what happened to me. I didn't want it to end. More and more, the more interviews I did, the more confident I got, the clearer I spoke. And I'm a stutterer by trade, and I work hard on that. And I've worked hard on that my whole life. If I know what I'm saying and I say the same thing over and over again, I'm good. But when when I'm talking to people, I get brain fog a lot of the times. I can't remember, man, what word am I trying to say here? But that didn't happen. It just all came out naturally. Looked the part, felt the part, was confident, did everything that was asked of me in a professional manner. Again, to the highest standards of my name and to everybody else that I was representing out there. But it didn't end there. Then I got to go to the press box. And again, I lived out another childhood dream. Because every single time I'm in a stadium, I'm always looking around. I'm like, where's the announcer? Because when I got hurt in 2016, I sat in a chair for years and years and years. And I'm like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I can't be a landscaper anymore. It's going to be too hard on my body. My body's broken. Besides, I had lost my equipment, my work truck, and I had lost my passion that I had such great passion for. It was my life, was being the best custom landscaper that I could possibly be. And I had a good career in it for 13 years. But I knew that would be over. And so I needed to reinvent myself. So I'd spend my days, just in a depressed state, taking all my meds and just gaining weight and living a life of just sadness for years, depression, like horrible. And the only time I came out of my house was on the weekends. And that was the only time I ever enjoyed getting out. Because why? I got to go watch my kids play softball and baseball and football. Again, sports. Sports is what got me out of my chair every weekend. Because sports is our life. When I was hurt and I was sitting in those chairs, all the commercials would come on TV. And I was like, man, I think I could do that. So I started practicing commercials. I would hear the same commercials over and over again. And when the commercial would come on, I would be in tune with the voiceover that was doing the commercial. Well, I took it a step further. I started going into my closet and putting a bunch of pillows in there so there would be no echoes. And I started to write my own scripts and I started to do my own announcing in there. And I'd send it off to people. And before you knew it, I was doing voiceovers for people for free. I just wanted to do it because it gave me purpose. It made me feel good. It made me feel like I'm doing something again. I'm contributing again after all these years. It's like everything happened in the correct order it was supposed to be. Work on being a voiceover guy. Then I had an opportunity to start announcing my son's football games, his Pop Warner football games. I loved it, and I grew with it. And I would volunteer every Saturday. I'd go out there for 10 hours, and I'd call every game, and I'd make those little kids on the field feel so damn good. I would call the game like I was in an NFL stadium, and they'd hear their name on the tackle or the run or the touchdown or the deflection or the interception or whatever it may have been. Their parents, they would capture that on video, and they'd hear that voice. And the kids down there would hear that voice, and you could tell they get pumped up, and now they're really playing with a lot of emotion because now they've put themselves on that field, on that very field that they've been looking down upon when they go to NFL games or college games. They heard their name. So again, I get brain fog. I don't even know what I'm saying. So when I got up to the booth, I watched the game. It was so fast. It was again 2 hours and 19 minutes. I reported on it, and I learned a lot. And again, it was one of the best experiences, of my life. And I'm still giddy about it. And I'm still so excited about it. Oh, what I was going to say is that when I got into the announcing, I worked real hard on, having that voice that's, a good radio voice or a TV voice or an announcing voice or a reporter voice. And so I think that's why I did good. I kind of had that, that voice, if you will, that really made it feel like I belong there. And not just somebody that was there to take in one day and just kind of really not put the work in, but just more like look around and just take it all in. I did everything. I looked around, I took it all in, and then I started to engage with these players, and I said the engagement went amazing. How did I do it? How did I get the interviews? I'm an outgoing guy. I just made it happen. But I had never done it before, so I didn't know how to do it. Again, I've taught myself pretty much everything in life. I've just always have taught myself how to get better. I'm always been my biggest critic. And so I was like, all right, well, if it happens, it happens. They may not come to me, but again, you look the part, you make yourself look bigger than what you actually are. You show up sharp. You have that confidence, and whatever you put out, you're going to get back. So I had a lot of players that walked up to me like I was meant to be there, like I was meant to be on the field. I was meant to have this opportunity in life. And again, I made the most of it. I made the best of it. And I still am in this moment of so much heartfelt and sincere and genuine gratitude that the moment happened. And I got home and I typed up a Facebook post that I want to share with you. And I hope this podcast is making sense. I'm just talking freely here and, just kind of, sharing with you, how the experience was. And, but this is what I said. I said, I can't even explain the reflection that took place for me on Tuesday night. And then I had tears all the way back to my truck when I was walking back to my truck after this whole entire 7-hour experience. just thinking back on how great my life was prior to January of 2016, then it all crashed and my family and I suffered such traumatic loss. In May of 2019, I was baptized at Mighty Oaks. And from that moment on, I promised myself that I would get 1% better each and every day since that promise I made. Since I made that promise to me, I pick up the Bible every single day. And it's not about the Bible here. It's about reading it. Like this podcast has nothing to do about this Bible. This Bible has helped me. You want to know why? Because it's helped me make goals. When I got baptized, I said, okay, how am I going to get my life back? How am I going to put the train back on the tracks? How am I going to reinvent and recreate myself? I need a higher power. I need somebody in my life that is going to inspire me, that is going to encourage me, that is going to love me and stand by me no matter what. And that's where God came in to play. So there's some pretty neat things that I did. I began to scribble in my Bible all the time. And this is something I've never done before. I mean, look at all these notes. I mean, notes of everything that I wanted to accomplish after I got baptized. And then I started writing even more notes, all these notes and all these notes and just all this stuff here. And what did I do? I wrote down my goals. I said, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want my life to go. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but I can only pray on it, and I can only do what I can. I can only put it all into God's hands, and whatever happens, happens. But since that day, all of my goals that I wrote down, I've checked them all off. I've checked them all off. I embarked on an intermittent fasting journey in May of 2019, and I've never missed one. I've never missed an intermittent fast. I've lost over 75 pounds since 2019, and now my blood work is perfect. I still live with a ton of pain, but my blood work is perfect, and my blood work was off for years after that infection I had. And I'm disciplined with it. I only eat one time a day, and I've done that for, I don't know, well over 1,200 fasts now. So I checked that. Taking daily walks and trying to achieve my 10,000 steps. I can't do it every single day, but I do it at least 15 to 20 times a month to get those type of steps in, because those are gratitude walks for me. That's when I reset and think back on the blessings and think back of the 46 years of my life. I passed a law in Congress that I worked so hard for when I was neglecting myself for over 3.5 years, as I could not move on with the rest of my life, knowing that this loophole that destroyed me and my family could ever happen again to somebody else, because it had already happened to tens and thousands of people over a 74-year period. That was a goal I wrote. Change federal law. I did it. I became a top Google reviewer. Something that in 2020, I wanted to raise businesses up that were failing. And now I've had over 10 million views on Google, and I love it, and I enjoy it everywhere I go. I'm always filming them and tasting and enjoying the food and giving good positive reviews. If it's not good, I don't leave a review. I'm not that guy. I only leave 5-star reviews. Very seldom a 4. And only one time it was a 1. But out of the, 1,500 reviews I've done, whatever, that one, it certainly deserved the one, and I'll stand by that all day. But everything I do is 5-star. I'm there to build up businesses, and I'm there to support small business. That was a goal of mine. Another goal of mine was to get more involved in the community. I've done that. Another goal of mine was to continue to be a national veteran advocate, and I've done that. Another goal of mine was to help volunteer to be a legislative policy advisor, to give good advice to lawmakers. And I'm living that dream right now. A goal of mine was to become an author. And I wrote a book. Another goal of mine was to get my wife the family vehicle again that we lost. And I got her a family vehicle. You know, we got our family vehicle back. A goal of mine was to become a motivational speaker, and I did it. And I'm still learning how to do it. I'm growing every day. I'm evolving. And there's just so much more here that I've done. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying that I'm very proud of myself, of all the achievements and all the accomplishments that I've put in, because no one sees the behind the work scenes of all the discipline that it takes to get there. It doesn't happen overnight, folks. This has been a work in progress. And then achieving childhood dreams of mine that are unfolding before my very eyes. I have been remolding, recreating, repairing, reimagining, and rebuilding myself. Again, as I continue my walk in life with gratitude in my heart. Now, this moment right here that I captured on Tuesday night, being a reporter on the field and getting great interviews and doing it all the right way, is almost as if it was meant to be. Felt really good. Now, I still live with a ton of pain, and it's all still there. But folks, if you are a chronic pain patient and you have struggles in life, learn to be happy, because when you're happy, it's so much easier to manage pain when you're happy than when you're sad. And another very, very special thing to me, and the most important thing to me that has kept me on course of being the best father and husband and counselor to my children and wife, is my family. I have the best family any man could ever want or ever wish for. 25 years of marriage, great loyalty, best friends, 4 beautiful kids, A, B, C, and D in order, college graduate, several athletes, men of character, artists, hard workers, smart, intelligent, good-hearted, just beautiful kids. And I couldn't be more blessed. Tuesday night was great. I didn't want it to end. And if you've never had one of those days where everything in life that day, nothing could go wrong that day. It was a perfect day. There's not a lot of perfect days out there. But my day and my experience at Minute Maid Park on Tuesday, Chicago Cubs, Houston Astros, was that day that I experienced, that I had the time of my life, and I lived out my childhood dream. It's a day that I will never forget, and it was a day that I never, ever, ever wanted to see come to an end. Folks, until next time for Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.